you always say that your work is very different, or you work very differently. I see it that you actually have so much similar, so much more of common than you think so. Maybe from the personal perspective, from the inside, you think like that. But for me as a viewer, I believe that there's a lot of things in common. The only thing that maybe differs is that Bignia works with this poetical view, while Wenfeng takes the reality and makes like it a bit ironical, like exaggerates it. So maybe like the technique's a bit different. And my first question, maybe to break the ice, because you sit very quiet. Did you receive the fine for painting on the walls in hotel?
Yeah, it's because the temperature on the wall is not easy to draw with the pencil. So I tried also different pencils and try to, scratch with my hand to make the shadow deep enough, because this is conceptually a shadow, not a real shadow. But I was enjoying in this working process to make something black. Interested in the idea of the shadow on the painting, also the shadow on the mirror. So especially this is an abstract painting. So if you think a painting also has their own shadow. So that's why I try to make the shadow visible, so they will overlap together.
In daily life, how do you communicate? I mean, if you have an idea like of your new work, do you share it with yours, like between each other, or you normally try to realize it yourself and then reach for the help when it's needed, like of your partner, or how do you work normally?
I don't know if there is it's a rule. I mean, it's different in different projects, but we are always communicating about our processes. But then also there are things always a lot of things, for example, from Wenfeng, there are still things we discover we don't know or we haven't seen. Yeah.
Sure, we share a lot of different possibilities for maybe for one concept or for one work, and then sometimes we can find really good result. But I mean, when I work on painting or drawing, I cannot.
Yes, no.
I cannot discuss a lot, so just do it, and then I select a better one. So this is the way.
When you're coming from China, you moved to Berlin in 2012, right? How your artistic practice changed since then? Were you also doing a lot of this film sketches, like this irony sketches in China, or it just like started to be first present in Berlin, like in Germany, when you started to notice maybe reality difference?
Yeah, I think somehow that this point, the humorous, this is a kind of one of the character of my work, because I think even this is a better work. Even this is a better work, but at least the work will makes you love. before 2012, I also did many video works and also photographic work. But when I revisit that time, I found it's more, I don't know, it's more directly related to somehow political issues or political sensibilities I'm trying to like confront. After I moved to Berlin, sure, it's the dairy context become more visible in my work, or the surround object, or surround the street, or materials become my working materials. This is the common point that what I met in the daily life is always, if something interesting, I always save in my brain and try to intervene into the situation to make something interesting. Yeah. This is on our street, Stettiner Straße, because they're always full of garbage, so you can find a lot of materials there. So. So the last work is just a collection of the different dysfunction street lamp. So when the normal lamp become dysfunction, so you always can read or can listen the speaking of a lamp, even it's a little bit we say sick, but then you feel the rhythms, you feel the very independent speaking of the lamp. So yeah, basically this collection of work is really working on how to shape the light, how to make the light disappear, and how the light and shadow connecting the space or change our perception to the surround.
Bignia, we see that Sternenberg is in most part of is also as a co-working part, like, or co-working agent for your work, right? It's also in mainly most of the works are created or envisioned in Sternenberg, and you referred yourself as a nomadic person. Can you maybe give a bit more details, like on how your daily life looks like, and how do you settle, or how do you get calm in Sternenberg in order to work?
I have to say that I also realized this, that in the last years, this Sternenberg got really visible in most of my works, or a lot of works are created there and are traced by the place. But before it wasn't like that. I think, my nomadic life. I was living in different places before I moved to Berlin, in China, and in Paris, and in Dresden, and then I like to live and belong to another place, another culture, another language. But this was always a route. Was maybe also it was a route in Sternenberg where I could come back. And since I'm in Berlin, I'm also, my nomadic life is more in between, because I'm also teaching in Hanover 2 days a week, and I'm traveling a lot, and then I have projects in Switzerland. So I'm recently more like locally traveling in trains. So it's kind of moved. My studio in Berlin is now outside in Brandenburg. Wenfeng has his studio at home. So this is also, I'm always on the move.
So maybe you can also trace the movement of train one day.
Yes.
With the pinhole camera.
Yes, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, I worked also with city walks. I did these alphabets from different cities where I lived in, which was not photographical. It's kind of, but it's important for me to, just in contrast, to have. So a lot of works, actually, I envision them in Berlin, or I think I conceive them there, but then I go to Sternenberg and to realize them, because I have everything I need there. The space, and the works are short, the nature, the photo lab. This shows, as you can imagine, I climbed on a fire tree, I think, a fir tree, Tannenbaum. I attached small light sources on my hands and feet, and recorded the climb onto the tree. And this is also a analog photographic registration of the climb.
You always record, like, the traces. You record how you climbed that Tannenbaum, for example, and your father commented on it that it's not already existent, right? It was already demolished or like cut down.
Yeah.
And also we see the preciseness of your records on the work, for example, like exact number of kilometers or exact like details of the exposure time. From where did you get this preciseness in your work?
Maybe from my father, who is a scientist. I don't know. I really don't know. But I like that the work are kind of abstract in a way, or cryptical, but they contain all these the experience of a process, the experience of the physical, a lot of it's physical, or kind of you could call it performative, or it's physical work, which in a way are hidden within these small traces. So it's in a way important for me to relate it to that special day, to that special time. It has like a...
It's a certain diary, in a way.
Yeah. This is the Sternenstift. It's the instrument which allowed me to draw with the light of a star. Here you see the instrument in action. It functions like the camera is on top and it's connected to a pen. And when I'm drawing with the pen, the camera makes the same movement as my hand, and the star, the tracks of the star imprint on the negative. It's a long exposure photograph with analog 35mm film. And here you see I redraw this shape, and this shape is the walk of a person on the earth, and more exactly the walk of my father in Sternenberg, which I recorded with a GPS device in Sternenberg while he's making hay in Sternenberg. So this was a retraced, each walk is one daily walk, and I retraced it with the light of a star. And then you see here an extract of all the stars, of course, draw the same, so we have the different colors of the different stars. Every day has a different color, shade of color. It depends on the length of exposure, or I don't know exactly on what exactly, or if there is a bit fog or whatever. I didn't work on the colors, it's just as they were. Now, shortly, this was recordings I did on the Rhine River, where I put a pinhole camera on the Rhine, and it was traveling for 14 kilometers. And I had to swim to catch it out, and it was kind of complex work with the bicycle traveling beside. And the pinhole camera was again photographing the sun. But the registration happening within the camera was an interplay of two movements, of the movement of the river. So it was turning, it had obstacles, and of the wandering of the sun in the sky. And the registration is circular because the water is horizontal and the sun's position is changing, so it's making a circle structure or a spiral. Where you see the black places, the camera stopped somewhere and I had to free it. So it was depending on these conditions of wind, of weather, of water. It comes from somewhere. It's not in a way invented. I create the situation, the Bedingung, the conditions, but then it happens, and it's a little bit out of my hand. It's depending and then it's important for me to note this, yeah. But it's an interesting question. I never really reflected upon that.
Can
Yeah.
I say something?
Yes.
I think it's always you can find a really poetic space between the scientific preciseness,
yes,
and unpreciseness in artistic action. So when they come in together, you find this a little bit absurd, but somehow it's really, this space is really, the tension is really interesting. They're unclear and clear. So
this is really important, and this is a good point. Just that there is a key which gives a push to the imagination. I mean, that you say, what that day, why this distance? Otherwise, if you look Sternenschrift, if you don't read the kilometers, you don't know that. You wouldn't imagine that it's a walk of a human being on Earth. But if you read this, it's kind of a question of how is this coming on. So it's kind of It's always the question, how much is it necessary to give a key to know all the informations, or how much information is needed or not. I mean, for the Sun and Circle, for example, I wrote all the diary of each walk and a lot of little history. It could be a text, but I never showed that. But for each picture.
Thank you so much, both.
Thank
Bignia,
you.
Wenfeng.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for being today.